And then I always have a sort of little souvenir from each thing I've ever done in my life where I've made a completely useless and ridiculous outfit to wear to it. And I love that for us. Look how much joy there is to be had here. Yay! Yay, sand cardigan! Woohoo! I'm pretty jazzed about what I've got going on right now. And then it hit me.
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me today. I've got 3 whips. I have a new sort of cast on that I'm really excited to be working on. So definitely cannot wait to share it with you. I think we should go ahead and just dive on in. Of course, I will start with what I am wearing, which is a rather, I'm going to say old, but it's a few years old crochet sweater that I worked up a few years back. So I started as a crocheter when my friend had her first son who just turned 7. So I've been crocheting for some time, and I never followed patterns when I crocheted. I only ever followed one pattern. And other than that, I just would basically make a bunch of different things out of giant rectangles. So this is probably my favorite crocheted sweater. I've probably gotten the most wear out of this one. But it's basically just 4 giant rectangles, so the front, the back, and then the sleeves with a little bit of shaping just here at the collar. And I crocheted this out of the Joann's brand. I think it's called K&C, like knit and crochet. And I want to say it might be called Essential Cotton, but it's some sort of cotton in this gorgeous, like variegated, but very almost like tie-dye orangey yarn. And it's so soft. If you can get your hands on this cotton yarn, I can't recommend it enough. I adore this sweater. I actually really regret not purchasing more colors in this exact yarn because I think for a crochet piece in this like just tie-dye, really fun, punchy print, it's just perfection. Obviously, being that it is cotton, it's pretty heavy, but the way that I crocheted this was basically by doing a sequence of 2 rows. The majority of it is done out of like a 2-row sequence where I would have a single crochet and a chain, single crochet, chain, single crochet, chain. And then the next row, I would double crochet just around those chain stitches. And I think then a single crochet into the single crochets, something like that. But it basically came out with this just super meshy, like very just floaty sweater. And actually, up until today, I had not made the neck hole quite narrow enough. So actually, it used to come all the way down to like the ends of my shoulders. So I'd always have to kind of just wear it very 80s style off a shoulder. And I really never liked that, but I loved the sweater so much. And then just the other day, I found a ball of this yarn in my stash. So I grabbed that this morning and just kind of nipped in the neckline a little bit further. And this is the exact neckline that I had wanted when I first made this, was just like this wide sort of boat neck look. So yeah, I think it's just really fun and beachy and summery. We're ignoring the fact that I have a really bad sunburn right now. So I was just kind of trying to lean into the beachy vibes by throwing this one on. And honestly, this is just such a summer staple since I made it. So yeah, I would have crocheted the back first, just probably bottom up, and literally just a rectangle using different variations of that kind of mesh, and then having a few solid rows, a couple mesh rows, and I'm sure that there's an actual pattern sequence to this, but I couldn't think of what it is right now. And then in the front, I did basically the same thing for like the whole first half. But then when I got to the neckline, I remember that I had marked the center and I started doing just a single crochet in the center, and each row, as I was coming up towards the neckline, I would add another single crochet to either side of that. So I started with 1 in the center, then built off of that by having then 3, then 5, then 7, and so on until basically it just sort of rounded out this neckline a little bit. And also I was trying to go for almost a, you know, those shirts that have like the cross in the front, like a thermal shirt. I don't know, something that sort of really just emphasized the neckline was what I had done there. So really nothing fancy. And then I went through and I do all of my seams in crochet with a single crochet and then just sew in the end. Very simple, I promise you. If you can crochet a rectangle, you can crochet a sweater. So that's what I'm wearing, and it's very cozy. It's very beachy. I love the color. I just really love this piece. It's one of my favorites that I've crocheted. So if you have any other questions on how exactly I made it, like I said, it was a few years ago, but if I can remember, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And yeah, so that's what I'm wearing. And that won't be the last crochet thing that you see in today's episode, but I do always like to start with my whip that has been on the needles the longest. And today that is my sand cardigan by Maria Isayeva of Ulin Knitwear. I am knitting this nearly floor-length cardigan out of Nora Madara in the colorway 01 Sake. And as of today, it has been on my needles for 80 days. 80. I know that last week I had mentioned I would go ahead and finally stitch up the few live stitches that I have sitting on try-it-on tubing under the arms, but I definitely did not get around to doing that. I did, however, make just a little bit of progress on this. Let me grab my tape measure so we can measure today. Right on par with my weekly progress. This has made just under 2 inches of progress from the Black Pearl Magic Project Progress Keeper I have right here. I did knit on this past week just during a soccer game, a great soccer game, in fact. It was funny, actually. I noticed, so where we are right now is that I'm just knitting the body. So it's straight back and forth knitting now until it reaches its full length. I do still have to go back and finish the sleeves. And then in the end, there's going to be a double knit button band that goes around the whole thing. But for now, I'm just enjoying the simple back and forth knitting of it all. And so I've been reserving this for while we watch soccer on Saturday nights. And I noticed the game. It was such a good game. If you're an Inter Miami fan, you know what I'm talking about. But as I was watching, when the game gets really exciting, I'll suddenly realize when I sort of come to that I've been like frantically knitting so fast, watching the game, like, oh my gosh, oh, he's about to score. Here we go. Ah. And I have to like stop because I realize I've been going at rapid speed and I genuinely forget what I'm doing. And it's just kind of funny how that works out. So this project has also been pretty cool because it's the first time that I'm purling without looking. So I have had projects in the past that I've done stockinette in the round without looking, strictly for that purpose. Even I love to have something like that on the needles for just mindless knitting. And this is the first time that I have something that's back and forth knitting, and it's cool. I feel like I've unlocked a new power. And so I'm getting a lot of practice in with my purling and purling without looking in general. So I'm definitely still enjoying this. I did say that today we would actually try this on, and I think we should. My fear with trying it on last week was that I had just finished the pockets, and so there was literally only a single stitch kind of holding that pocket together. And I felt like if I had tried it on at that point, it wouldn't be the true dimension because the pocket opening would just be flaring too much. So now that we have a couple of inches underneath it, I think we could try it on. I also so appreciate everyone's opinion on the question that I had posed about how I should knit the pockets. So the actual pocket lining in the pattern is meant to be knit in the same yarn, but I was feeling like that would just give me a really bulky fabric. And we will see when I get there. But the general consensus is that you guys do agree I should use a finer yarn. And I had a lot of really fun suggestions about even sewing pockets out of fabric, using a sock yarn, something with a nylon for more durability, which I love that idea. People suggesting to use a pop of color in the pocket. Someone suggested to, instead of knitting a double layer pocket and it's sort of living freely inside of this pocket hole, to instead just knit a single layer and stitch it to the front of the cardigan. And I think then I would just have to sort of create a little band on the other side to make the hole make sense. And I like that idea because I like the idea of not having that free floating pocket flap inside, for fear that like occasionally it would escape. And I'm sure I could just tack it down. But I don't love the idea of being able to see the pockets, when it's just an open cardigan. It doesn't have buttons or anything. So it'll like flop open and you are, I think, going to see those pocket linings at some points while wearing it. So I like the idea of it just sort of being fixed to the front of the cardigan. And I think I'll just have to play around with it, because my only fear with that is that from the front of the outside of the cardigan, you'll be able to see like an outline of where I've stitched a pocket to, especially after wear and tear. So it's just something to think about. I'm really glad that I asked the question. I'm so happy with all the suggestions I got, especially that most people said if I'm going to use a different yarn, I should still include an inch or two just at that very top of the pocket opening in the Nora yarn, so that from the outside you see that kind of first and then don't see the different colored pocket on the inside, which right now I love the idea of a pop of color, but I also feel like, again, you're going to see it probably from the inside. So I'm thinking I would probably just go in with a neutral gray sock yarn or something. I could probably, if I wanted to just go the wool route and wanted a sort of DK worsted weight yarn, I could use, I'm sure, some Fisherman's wool from Lion Brand, and the oatmeal color would probably be a good match for this. So it's something I'm still going to think about, but I'm just so appreciative for all the ideas that you guys had. So thank you. And with that, let me grab some try it on tubing so we can get this on and just make sure things are going well, because I have not tried it on since adding the sleeves. All right, we've got our try it on tubing. I'm actually also going to put the stitches, since I have sleeve stitches on hold being tied to the couple live stitches that I have under the sleeve. I'm going to transfer those live stitches onto a different try it on tubing so that these are no longer tied together. But with that, we could head into my favorite segment, try it on tubing and chat. Yeah, it's just a nice vibe every time. I really like this. Okay, so while I am moving the stitches, I feel like I usually have something to say while I'm moving these over, but I did just kind of tell you everything that I had to tell you about this project. So yes, I got really badly sunburned. Note to everyone out there, the weather's getting nicer, and personally, I love to make outside. As the weather gets nicer, basically all of my hobbies just sort of come creeping out, and I feel like I don't have enough time in the day to do everything that I want to do. But basically, I wind up living outside and enjoying all of those crafts and hobbies out there. So I had done that yesterday. And here in Connecticut, it was absolutely stunning. We have another really nice day today, but it started with rain. But otherwise, yesterday I think was 75. And so I was outside all day and I got sunburnt. So this is your reminder to use your SPF. Lesson learned, lesson learned. I always feel like, oh, it's not that bad. I'll just be outside for a little bit. And then you spend, a full 8-hour day in the sun and I'm crispy. I'm crispy today. So that also actually leads me into, I was going to try on another one of my whips today, but the idea of putting straight up just wool on my flesh kind of makes me want to crawl out of my body. So I don't think I'll be trying that on today. Regretfully, I apologize. So the try on of the sand cardigan will have to suffice. Though I feel like this is fairly highly anticipated since none of us know, including myself, what it's looking like right now. So I did try on the past couple of weeks to sort of anticipate the pocket openings, but all the while it's been on the needles on the cable that is just way too short to actually allow all the stitches to expand and fit around my body even. So we shall see how this goes. I wish I could tell you which size off the top of my head. I feel like everything that I've been knitting lately has been in a size 5. So I'm going to say that I'm knitting the size 5 on this, or maybe this is one that has letter sizes. So in that case, it was probably the size large or something like that. So I'll make sure that the size is on the screen at this point, but this is so hard to move over to the try it on tubing. And generally when I do this segment, I lose stitches and I don't have the mental capacity for that today. So we are wrapping up here. Come on, last few stitches. I also think that I would like to do a check-in to see how much yarn I've used so far, because I've just sort of been grabbing a skein as I need it, balling it up or caking it up. And I haven't actually been monitoring how much yarn has been used. I believe when I purchased the yarn, didn't I purchase 12 skeins of it? So I have absolutely no idea how much we've gone through at this point. I should definitely check in because I have been sort of assuming I have enough yarn, but it's not the recommended yarn for the pattern, and I'm not knitting off the recommended gauge, so it's a big gamble. Anyway, we're off the needles. Let's get this thing on so we can end our try it on tubing and chat. Oh man, yeah, that's some serious expanding to do. Oh wait, I forgot to do this thing like I said I was going to. All right, I don't have to do that on camera. It's gonna take a second. If you are new here and you're wondering why I have randomly, I think 3 live stitches underneath the arms here, it's because this sweater, this cardigan is knit from the top down, and you sort of knit the back panel and then just knit everything down to the underarm, and then you are instructed to begin the sleeves, and that's how you connect from the front to the back. And I had done that, started the sleeves, kept knitting in the body, and felt like the sleeves were too big. So I tested out to see if I could just rip out the sleeves without having to rip out the whole body. And I was able to do that, but it meant that those few stitches that were bridging the gap from the body to the sleeve, I just kind of had floating. And so I have to mattress stitch the sleeve and the underarm basically together of the body. So if you were wondering, that's why. So, all right, let's get this on. The edges here want to curl up so badly, so I'm just trying to give them a little tug. But yeah, how great is this? So it seems like the fit is working. I do feel like, well, it's curling over, but then also I'm wearing a full sweater underneath, which I know I said I was going to wear something more conducive to trying things on today, but this is way bulkier than I would ever wear underneath this cardigan, but it is nice to know that I could if I wanted to. So I think that that is all working out. And again, we have to keep in mind that this is going to have the double knit button band across the front. I think you can tell just from this top part, which has already been blocked up to about here. This has all been blocked, and then under here hasn't. You can tell that it's just sitting so much closer and nicer. And so then with the button band, I think that the sizing is perfect. And then really the concern that I had was that I had basically just misread parts of the pattern, which led me to putting my pockets slightly more forward than they were written to be. And I don't think it's a problem at all. In fact, I think that that'd be horrible if they were any further back. So I think that they're in a really great spot as far as where they're sitting on the body right now. Yeah, see, that's perfect. So absolutely perfection. Yay! Toasty with the two of these on right now, but absolutely loving the fit. I think that it's the perfect amount of ease. If my biggest fear with this knit is that I'm going to put all of this time into knitting it and it's going to just look like a fancy robe. And I know, I hear you. It does look like that. That's exactly what it's going to look like. But I would like to look very sort of like chic, comfortable, what is that, like elevated loungewear? That's a great look. I'm okay with that. What I don't want is to look like I've just rolled out of bed. And I think we're in a good place because I didn't go so crazy with the positive ease on this one. I think if it's way oversized, it definitely would have that sort of I just rolled out of bed look. Whereas this I think just looks comfortable but polished. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say. I'm just glad that it fits. So with that, I think I should just move the progress keeper and yeah, move on. We love it. Yay, sand cardigan. Woohoo! Yeah, definitely that would be a very toasty sweater to wear at the same time as another sweater, which is good. I really would love to have this for just the chilly mornings on warmer days when I'm up really early to go to work and I just need just something to throw on to get me from point A to point B. And then I usually will take it off by the time I get there. But then, if it's cold and air conditioned, it's nice to have a layering piece. So that's the goal with this. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy the difference that it makes from the blocked part to the unblocked part. So just bear that in mind. But that is the sand cardigan. And yeah, we're going to be just back and forth for now. Next up, we've got the Florence tank by Sari Nordland. This is something that I'm knitting in part of my own knit along, which is Stash Bust Spring. So I'm using stash yarn for this project. And the yarn is Mystery. It came off of a cone. And yeah, that's all you need to know. I love hearing what you guys are making for Stash Bust Spring. The long and short of it is just that you want to be knitting up or making with stash yarns. So that is what this is. Here she is. This is the Progress Keeper from last week. And I actually have already measured this. So I have done about 1.25 inches of progress. This has been on the needles for 17 days now. And the reason I already know how much progress I have made is because I completed my goal for the week, which was to knit a full repeat of the lace pattern. So from the Progress Keeper to the cable there, that is one full repeat. And my goal is going to be to get at least a repeat done weekly, which seems very feasible until you realize just how much focus and mindfulness this project takes. That being said, now that the weather is getting nicer, I am really excited to be able to take this one outside in the mornings with my coffee and just listen to the birds and with the breeze and my little OC with me. We have been taking advantage of those nice days to knit up on this in the morning, and that's the perfect way to work on a project like this. So when we touched base last week, I was talking about I have about 300 grams of this yarn. And being that it was an unlabeled cone, I didn't know the yardage that I was working with. So I wanted to see how much yarn a repeat of the pattern used up. I did that by weighing my project and then knitting a full repeat and then weighing it again. And so I have now learned that a single repeat of this project takes about 16 grams of yarn. And so now I can use that information just to make sure as I'm going that I'm going to have enough yarn to complete it. Based on the rough maths that I had done this morning when I was finishing up that last repeat, I'm pretty sure I have plenty of yarn to get through this. And that's just by kind of measuring, okay, so if a single repeat takes 16 grams of yarn and it's also about 1¼ inches, how many repeats is it going to take to knit up the rest of the body on this, considering the fact that we already have the ribbing there, and then basically saying, okay, if it's going to be another, I think I've deducted around 6 inches of knitting, then I did 6 inches divided by 1¼ inches. That's a full repeat. Looks like I'm going to have to do about 5 more repeats in the body, so to the underarm, in order to make this long enough. I know that for the rest of the body, so from where I am right now until I hit about the underarm, I'm going to be using about 80 grams more of yarn. So at the point that we are right now, I've done 3 full repeats of the lace, plus I have the ribbing, and weighing this whole project on the needles and everything, it's about 86 grams. So reasonably speaking, I have enough yarn is the moral of the story, but I think we will be cutting it close. The idea being that if the whole body uses 80 grams of yarn for the first half and then an additional 80, right? Is that what I said for the second half? Then the full body is going to be taking about 160 grams of yarn, and that's including the weight of the needles and the progress keeper and everything. So there's just no way that the rest of the garment, the vest, as it has a whole V-neck, there's no way that's going to weigh more than 160 grams. So I can say with pretty certainty, I could say with a good bit of certainty that the full vest on its own will weigh less than 300 grams, which is the amount of yarn I have to work with. I hope that made sense. I feel like that was kind of jumbly, but I feel like I can breathe a big old sigh of relief right now because I don't think I'll be playing yarn chicken with this one. That being said, though, I noticed that when I put in the photos to sort of introduce each whip, there's one project that I have been using the photo of the back of the garment because it looked so beautiful. And then I realized that that's not what the back of the garment looks like in the pattern. So okay, interesting. I just looked to make sure I was saying the name right because I'm pretty sure that this is actually another designer, but I think her name's Camille, something like that. Now I'm super confused. When I saw this photo of the back of her Florence tank, I thought that the back had a V-neck shaping to it. But now I see it is done the way that the pattern is written, which is sort of this higher scoop back And basically, based off of what I thought was happening in this photo where I thought it was a V-neck, I was like, maybe I should do that. That's a really pretty option. And in my mind, it's as simple as following the instructions for shaping the V-neck in the front in the lace pattern and the sort of button band and just doing that on the back. I don't know if it's that simple, but I thought that was a really pretty look. Whereas the project photos in other people's projects, as well as Sari's, the back of this vest, it for me is a little bit neither here nor there in that it's not really a high back where it sort of sits at the back of your neck, but it scoops down a little bit where for me, it looks maybe a little bit like unintentional, like it just sort of sags down, and I don't love that. So now I'm realizing that what I was picturing is not the pattern, and I have to navigate that a little bit. So another thing, if you have tips or advice or input that you'd like to share with me, definitely please do because yeah, now that I just realized that what I thought was happening was not happening. So we'll have to figure that one out. I'll move my progress keeper right now before I forget. But yeah, something to think about. Otherwise, this is getting a lot easier for me. I don't necessarily feel like I need to be knitting each individual stitch with the same intensity as I was, but I'm very much still enjoying this as my mindful knitting. And the next sort of thing that I have to be aware of is the next button, which in the pattern, Sari tells you to knit your button holes a certain distance apart. So it's a measurement that's listed. And basically, when I had done the first buttonhole and then the second one, I counted the amount of rows that I had in between and I wrote it down next to the chart so that I know, I think it's every 20 rows, I'm putting in a buttonhole. So now I know that I can just work towards that. And it's a pattern repeat. It's a 10-row pattern repeat. So I know every other time I hit the same row, I can add in my buttonhole, which I just think is really nice. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I've just joined in a new ball of yarn here. So yeah, I'm just going for it with this one. It's been smooth sailing since my whole chaotic beginning and therefore I'm enjoying it more. So that's good. All right, that's all I have to say. That's the Florence take. Did I say how long it's been on the needles? It's been on the needles for 17 days. Maybe next week it'll be time for this one to throw on some try it on tubing because I still don't know if this is actually going to fit around my body. Did I say what size? I'm very bad. I feel like I have sunburn brain. This I'm knitting in the size 5 and I'm knitting it on 3.75 millimeter needles. There we go. The next whip that I have to share with you is my Stripe Hype sweater by Veronica Lindberg of Kutova Kika. This is another Stash Bust spring project for me. So I am knitting this out of Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool in the colorway Oatmeal as my main color. And then all of my stripes are using some thrifted nature spun wool in various sort of autumnal colors, with the exception of the darkest stripe that you see in the middle of the body, which is leftover Cascade 220 Superwash in the colorway Jet. And clearly it's been a long week and I have needed my mindless knitting, so we have made progress. This is the project that I really wanted to try on today, but I can't stand even the idea of putting this wool near my skin. So it's going to have to wait, which is unfortunate because I'm just about done with the body. So when we spoke last, I didn't even put in a progress keeper because I had not yet finished the armholes. But I want to say, so I don't know. We've basically made it from this stripe all the way down through the body. And I'm probably not even going to put on a progress keeper today because I'm about to be done with the body. Then it'll be time for the sleeves. I mentioned last week that this project, if you need a simple, mindless project that still has a little interest to it, a little bit fun, but mostly if you just want to hit the ground running with a project and you don't want to worry about short rows and shaping and things to think about in the beginning of the pattern, you need to knit this. It's just knit in a big rectangle on the back, and then you join the fronts, and it's wonderfully mindless. That being said, I basically got to the underarm and then sort of disregarded the pattern. The reason being is that this is intended to have decreases in the body that sort of give it a little bit more of a tapered look. And I just know that I want this to be big and cozy. I really don't want it to taper. And so for those reasons, I'm just knitting mine straight down. So I really stopped looking at the pattern once I joined for the underarm. And I went back and forth on that for a little bit because I like the pictures of the pattern. That's why I decided to knit this. But I think what I loved about the design was the color blocking stripe sequence. And I didn't pay too much attention to the other details after that. So I really want a big, flowy, oversized sweatshirt-like sweater. So I'm knitting mine straight, and then I'm probably going to do a pretty chunky split hem that's a little longer in the back and shorter in the front so that I could just chuck this on with anything and have it be very cozy. Now, in the past week, I've added the final contrast color of the body, which is one of the nature spun wools in this like camel sort of color. And I'm just so thrilled with the way that these colors are playing out. I love the sort of minimal contrast of these last two compared to the first two colors, and how the gray kind of appears as a navy blue when it's put up against this very rusty orange brick red. And then I was nervous that adding in the camel would maybe take away from that, but it still does read more on the navy side than the gray side up against these colors. So I'm just thrilled with the way that this is turning out. Now, in the hem, so in the pattern, the original design has the first body contrast color is a little pop at the end of the cuffs, and then the last sleeve contrast color is a little pop on the collar. And then as far as I could tell, the hem of the sweater is just the main color. But I think I would like to add a little pop of the dark gray to the hem, just to use a little bit more of that from stash. But also I think that it'll just sort of bring that balance back to everything with the depth of colors being more evenly distributed. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. I'm probably going to, since I'm going to do the split hem, I think that I will do my split hem, a couple, maybe 2 or 3 inches of ribbing, and then I'll probably do an Italian bind off, the tubular bind off. And so once I get to the setup rows on everything, I'll probably just switch over to the little pop of color. And so it'll wind up being the 2 setup rows plus the sewn bind off in the little pop. It's kind of what I'm thinking. I love how many people were saying that they plan to knit this sweater. If you're thinking about it, just consider this your push to knit it. I can 100% see me knitting this again and again. in more stripes. I love people playing with the different stripe sequences on the Ravelry page, but then also just knitting a plain sweater like this. I just think a really good basic construction as well as finished project to have in your arsenal of your library of different patterns. I'm so thrilled with the simplicity of it because that's what I wanted, was simple. I didn't want, my new like statement sweater. I just wanted a project that I could grab and go with, and the stripes keep it really exciting and engaging. And this is what I mean when I say that I can find little pockets of time to knit in throughout the day if I don't have to think about it. So even more so, I have gone ahead and popped on one of my little DIY row counters that I just build by making a rainbow out of stitch markers. And I have done that so that I don't even have to count my rows anymore. I just know when I hit the progress keeper at the end of my rainbow stitch markers, I am done with that color of stripes and I move on to the next one. I also didn't bother to do the sort of precautions that are in the pattern. So she does tell you in the pattern how to avoid the jogs and the stripes, but honestly, it just simplicity. That's what this was here for. And so there are jogs in all of my stripes and I don't even care. I just don't. I'm just happy with how simple a knit this is. So that does not bother me. So yeah, this is 10 days of knitting in the size extra large. And so even in the size extra large, 10 days of knitting. And it's not been my only project. If you were knitting on this monogamously, I am certain I would have had a lot more done by now. But on 4mm needles, it's just such a happy project. I just love it. Look how much joy there is to be had here. I don't know. I just think it looks more impressive than it is to knit up. And those are my favorite types of projects, right? High impact, minimal effort. That's the sweet spot. So that's the stripe hype. Get it on your needles if you're thinking about it, especially for Stash Bust Spring. I have way too much of each of these colors still left over. So I weighed my first one and I think it used 25 grams of yarn, but that was eating into the neckline still. So those aren't complete stripes. I figured I'd get a better read after I finish the camel stripes. The cascade was truly a scrap, so I didn't weigh it beforehand, and so I couldn't tell you exactly how much I've used. But yeah, it's not using up a ton of yarn. So I would say if you have scraps that are 50 grams or less, it's just way more than you even need. Anyway, I'm just loving it. So that's the stripe hype. Now I have a sort of new cast on, a new project. I told you that it wouldn't be the last time we'd be talking about crochet in this episode. And it's been a long time since I crocheted anything. But there's a story here, so just bear with me for a moment. First of all, if you had seen when I posted my yarn stash tour, I was showing these cones of blue, what I'm assuming is cotton, and talking about how the color is just not for me, and I couldn't see myself actually wearing it, so I was probably going to destash them. Well, I was organizing and rearranging some things in my stash. I really like to do that, especially if I'm feeling some cast on energy. I'll just sort of go rearrange my tubs of yarn, and I kind of have a high priority tub and then a low priority tub. And I like to shift things from one to the other and sort of plan projects and dream a little bit, and it sort of soothes the cast on energy. But in this case, it wound up inspiring me. It was inspiring. I saw those blue yarns and it made me think we are going to be going to an Argentina soccer game. And I'm the kind of person, someone called me a stunt knitter once, and I love that. I think I'm a stunt maker. I love to have an occasion and make something to wear for it. And I don't care if it's the only time I wear that thing. I have a little closet, like a little portable garment rack that is covered where I keep my sort of one-off handmade projects and outfits that are basically like unwearable except for that specific event that I wore it to. And so I enjoy the anticipation of a fun and exciting event like this is for us, and building up that anticipation by like making my outfit to go to it. So I knew that I wanted to make an outfit to wear to this soccer game. I went with my family, was it last year, at some point to a Yankee game, and I'll try to find a photo of the little outfit that I had made for that, which I used a couple of old knockoff Yankees jerseys and hacked them up and made this little like shirt dress that was too short to be a dress. I had to wear shorts under it, but I loved it. I had so much fun at that game because I felt really cute and just fun and like cool in my handmade memorabilia for the team. So I wanted to do something like that for this Argentina game. But the jerseys for the soccer jerseys are crazy expensive. And I'm like, I'm not going to wear a jersey in real life. And so for that price, it just seemed a little excessive. But then I saw the blue yarn and I thought, hey, that kind of looks like Argentina blue. And then it hit me. I had this vision of, I kind of want to look like one of the wives of the team. I want to show up as if I have a box at this game and look very luxury but sporty. And what better way to do that than to crochet a granny square dress version of the Argentina jersey? Potentially with some embroidered numbers and letters on it if I have the time. We're on a time crunch, so I don't know that I will. But I couldn't help myself from just trying it out to see. So let me show you the yarn. I basically had two different blues to choose from. These are the two yarns that I had. And they're both thrifted. They both came on cones, and I have copious amounts of both of them. They're definitely not the same. The lighter blue is a little bit chunkier, and it has a really intense twist to the yarn, whereas the darker blue is, it almost could even be like a chainette style. It feels more embroidery thread-like. But basically, I felt like the light blue was a little too light for the Argentina jersey blue, and then the dark blue was a little too dark. And then I thought, what if I just hold them together? And so I did. And this is one of my little squares. I liked that by holding the two together, it gave a more marled look, obviously. I liked the dimension of it, almost the way that this has the tie-dye sort of looks. I feel like this has this color wash going on that gives it just way more visual interest than any single color on its own. But then I also thought it would be better to have just a marling and be wrong than to have one solid color and be wrong as far as the blue. I know no one is going to notice that the blue is off except for me, but this was the best solution I had. So I will also try to put up my sort of rough sketch that I had made. But basically, I'm trying to take the striping from the jersey and translate that with granny squares. So the thought is that I will have three, oh, this is going to be a look. I will have 3 stripes of blue granny squares going straight down, and then in between, I will have white granny squares. And this is a spin-off of a crochet skirt that I had made a couple years ago now, and I'm kind of trying to just make the dress version of that. I had mentioned that I would maybe try to make a tutorial for something like that, and I don't know that I have it in me to explain myself well enough. But I'm going to think about it. So I kind of wanted to test it out through this, have something really exciting for me, and then if you guys are into it, if it goes well, then I'll consider putting together a tutorial. But basically, yeah, it's going to have, so I can use some other blue granny squares. I'm trying to balance these. It's going to basically have granny squares all across, making up the straps and then the body, but these two will be white and the stripes will go vertically as long as I can make this before the game. And then, so I'm making a bunch of little squares and then I'm going to seam them together. That was how I had made the skirt. Now, I think I will maybe try sewing them together with a zigzag stitch rather than sewing them by hand or crocheting them together, which I had done the seams on my skirt with just a single crochet. So I might try zigzag stitching these together instead. We will see, but I really like making the individual squares. It just makes this very grab and go for me. And I'm going to try to just make a few squares every night for the next few weeks. And then I will figure out even where I'm getting some white cotton yarn and how much I'm going to need. So this is going to be like a play as I go. I don't even know that I'll talk about this every week because I think for a good amount of time, I'm just going to be making a ton of these blue squares. But then my thought was, once I have this sort of crochet squareness going on, what I could do is go in with some black yarn and knit ribbing on all of the finishes. And that would give it this very sporty look. And then I thought I could embroider like I've ever embroidered before, but I think I could embroider the whole number 10 and messy across the back. And I think it'd be really cool with maybe even the like black and white stripes down the side. I don't know. Right now, I'm making little Blue's Clues squares and I'm okay with that. So I've made a ton of these already. And I'm not even going to track the progress of how long this takes because this is just going to be, I mean, this is more for me. This is more for me than it is for you. But this is just a few of the squares that I've made. And yeah, once I've had enough of them, I'll sort of measure how long I think things need to be. And I'm trying to be realistic and say that I'll start by considering it being a short dress. And then if I have the time and yarn, I will make it longer. But I'd love for this to be a maxi length dress. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be awful. I'm so excited. So that is happening in tandem with all of my knitting. And I think that by having the little granny squares, it's just so nice. It's a little refresher. It's a little change up in my muscle, working. So if I feel like I've just been knitting and my hands aren't feeling great, I can bust out the crochet hook. And yeah, it's just really fun. So holding these two together is giving me around about a worsted weight. I took the crochet hook out. I am using a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. And the actual squares that I'm creating, I will link the tutorial for down below. They, I think, are reminiscent of the ones in the Battenberg blanket that everyone is crocheting, where they're a little bit more solid and then just sort of have a few eyelets going up the 4 corners. I've used these squares before, and I wanted something that was going to be a little more solid so that I could put the numbers and letters and things on the back. But I don't know. I'm just excited about it. It's a silly little thing that I like to do, but it gets me excited for, just little adventures. And then I always have a sort of little souvenir from each thing I've ever done in my life where I've made a completely useless and ridiculous outfit to wear to it. And I love that for us. So that's the crochet project, and I'm very, very, very excited about it. So those are all of my whips at the moment. I am feeling really good about the balance that we have. It's so nice to have my stripes in the rounds, and then to be able to have something while I'm drinking my coffee. And even that idea of sort of like setting times for each of these things. So my thought is start the morning with a cup of coffee in the Florence tank and just some mindful knitting. If I can outside, even better. Otherwise, just inside, really nice, maybe play some music. Then sort of at the end of the day, I've been rounding it out by grabbing my crochet bag and heading outside and just getting in a few granny squares when I can there while listening to a podcast. And then the sand cardigan being reserved for soccer watching is just so fun. It's another way to connect something that I enjoy, watching soccer, with enjoying knitting on this cardigan. And I just think it's really fun. So I'm pretty jazzed about what I've got going on right now. And I hope you are too. And yeah, I think it's just, as the weather's warming up, it's making me want to pull out the crochet hook and making me want to dabble in the many other hobbies that I have. So I've been spending some time doing that, and it's just a good time of year, isn't it? So let me know what you're working on. In fact, I'd love to know what you're working on outside of your knitting. Do you have other hobbies too? I'm so curious to know. What am I doing with my hands? I'm curious to know what everyone's got going on, because I just think it's a fun time of year, spring. It's new beginnings. It's just starting fresh, isn't it? So definitely let me know what you have going on. My plans for the week are just to keep on keeping on, and hopefully by next week I have the body finished on the stripe pipe. So we'll have to see about that. Anyway. If you enjoyed this video and if you like knitting content in general, then I really hope you will join us again. I post these podcast style of videos every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. And I have been forgetting to mention, but of course you can always come keep up with me a little bit more personally over on Instagram at aka Nora Knits. I really love engaging with you guys in my stories, and I'm constantly asking questions about different pattern suggestions and just things like that. So I like having that aspect on Instagram. And quick mention of Stash Bust Spring, still going strong until June 21st. But basically just knit up something with your stash yarn, and we'll talk about how you can enter prizes later if you haven't heard already. With that, if you enjoyed this video, I would definitely appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up. If you subscribe and ring the bell, you'll be notified anytime I post a new one. And a big ol' thanks for watching. I will catch you on the next one. Don't forget to wear your SPF. All right, you guys, bye.